Ladies and gentlemen, I'm jeweller Barry Roberts. Welcome to my company, Roberts & Co, here in London, England. Today I'm going to share with you how I make one of the most popular necklaces in our shop, in the Roberts & Co online store. It's a necklace made of a very fine style of chain called trace chain. Now this is just over 2mm thick. There's meters of it here. Doesn't look like it, but there is meters of it there. It's very fine. Now, many of the necklaces and bracelets we make them entirely by hand. We make every link. However, for this very fine trace chain, we have it machine made. We use a company here in England in the Birmingham Jewellery Quarter that have been in Birmingham for over 100 years, and they can trace their company history back here in London over 200 years. So they're very good at what they do. You don't stay in business for over 200 years if you're not. What we have to do is assemble this chain into wearable necklaces. With many of the necklaces we make, they're available in different lengths. The most popular lengths for fine jewellery are 16, 18 and 20, but the possibilities are endless. Now, one of the most popular styles we've been making recently are adjustable, and again we do them in different lengths. Today I'm going to make one that's adjustable between 16, 17 and 18, and the reason they're so popular is change your outfit, you can change the style of your necklace, you can change the length of it. They're especially popular for necklaces and pendants. So we need to assemble this first, which is a relatively straightforward process. Get it to the right length, and then what's not so simple, we need to solder it all together. And for that we'll be using a special piece of equipment. We need to get these tiny components up to between 700 or 800 degrees for the jewellery grade solder to flow. You need to get them up to 700 or 800 degrees without melting them or becoming a solid blob of solder. So we'll use a special soldering torch that can give us the heat we require with pinpoint needle accuracy. But first of all, let's assemble this necklace. Now for this, I need some tools and a ruler. Now here in England, to sell stuff by weight, being a jeweller, you need government approved scales, which we have. To sell stuff by length, you need a government approved ruler, which costs a fortune. It has to do with scales. And they only do them in centimetres, which is useless. So we'll have to use that to double check later that it's the correct length. For now we're using this rule of inches on. So we need to add 3 jump rings, each 1 inch apart, so this necklace can be adjusted and worn at either 16 inches, 17 inches or 18 inches long. And we need to add a clasp. Different styles of clasp are available, and for this necklace we will be using the style called a bolt ring. So first we're adding a 5mm jump ring, which will be the end of the necklace. For this I'm using a pair of chain nose or snipe nose pliers and a pair of flat pliers. These are special jewellery making pliers, so the jaws are smooth unlike other pliers, so they will not mark the piece. I'm using a headband magnifier for this so we get the perfect fit. It's a little tricky to do this and keep both you and I in focus, and so we can both see what I'm doing here. The jump rings need to be opened and closed from side to side so they stay perfectly round in shape, and they need to be closed perfectly or we will not be able to solder them. So the necklace is the correct length. We fit 3 jump rings that will make the necklaces adjustable first. Each jump ring is 1 inch apart. Now we measure out the remaining main length of chain for the necklace, so then we can fit the clasp and tag. We fit this first without cutting to ensure we get the correct overall length. So if it needs adjustment, it can be done now. Then once we've got the correct overall length, we can cut the necklace from the length of chain. Okay, we've now got our necklace assembled at the correct length. It's just a fraction over 18 inches long, but if I remove another link, it will be just under. Better to be a fraction over than a fraction under. So now I can make the final cut of this necklace off the meters of chain, and then all we need to do is solder it together. To solder sterling silver chain links on this tiny scale, we use a micro soldering torch. We have an Aquaflame Model 800, which is years old. They produce a very hot and precise flame. The machine passes electricity through distilled water, producing hydrogen and oxygen gas by electrolysis, which is then atomised through a solvent to reduce the temperature of the flame and make it a little more controllable. These systems cost much more than most jewellery torches, however they are very efficient and environmentally friendly. You're not storing any flammable gas, just the water and liquid they use to produce the gas on demand. And they are capable of producing the pinpoint flame hot enough to solder jewellery that we need. We can also change the torch tips to produce flames suitable for the smallest chain link up to rings and bangles. So now we have our necklace assembled. I need to solder together two 3mm jump rings that hold the bolt ring clasp onto this one. Other clasp styles are available. On this one we're using the bolt ring. So we've got soldered the two 3mm jump rings together, and then although there are 3 5mm jump rings on the adjustable end, I'll only solder together 2, and one will be left friction fitted together for health and safety reasons, because then if the necklace does happen to get caught in a piece of industrial equipment, it won't take the wearer's head off. But it's also the strongest link, so it's not going to give out in normal wear. Now I'm going to flux the joints with some borax. I've got the borax cone and dish here, and just need to put some water in there and mix up the borax, which will help the solder flow. Without using flux it will not work. Now the micro welder will give us pinpoint accuracy, and we'll be able to get the jump rings up to between 700 and 800 degrees for the solder to flow. And what I'll use to place the solder is this piece of steel, which I've filed into a very fine point, so we've got a needle point there. And if you heat the solder up, it will ball up with the micro welder, and you can actually pick it up with the steel. It won't flow on the steel, it just picks it up, and then we can use this like a pencil to put the solder right where we need it. We'll get the jump rings actually up to the melting temperature of the solder, which with experience you can tell by the colour of it. We turn the light off, you actually tell by the colour of the metal. So once it's up to the melting temperature of the solder, I'll then place the solder exactly where we want it, and then the necklace will just need polishing. But let's get on with the soldering. So first I'm cutting some small pallions of solder for all of the joints. We're using jewellery grade silver solder, which produces a permanent joint. We have to roll out the solder first using a rolling mill to make it much thinner than standard for these size jump rings. The silver solder shares many of the properties of the sterling silver components, so it's similar in durability and a colour match. However, that also makes it flow at over 700 degrees centigrade. So we apply some borax flux to each joint to allow the solder to flow, and also to the surrounding areas to give them a little protection from the residual heat. We use the micro soldering torch to get the jump rings up to the melting temperature of the solder first, and then I apply a small ball of solder using a steel pick, so the solder only flows precisely where we need it, and we only solder the joints together and not the links themselves. Using the micro soldering torch, we switch tip sizes until we get the right size flame for the joint, also switching tip sizes during the process of making this necklace because the rings it's constructed with are different sizes. Okay, so now we've soldered all of our jump rings together that require soldering together. Now I need to pickle the necklace to clean off the fire scale, and then it will require polishing. So here we have the finished sterling silver adjustable trace chain necklace, and when you adjust it from 18 to either 17 or 16 inches in length on this model, you get this interesting lariat feature down the back. They're perfect to be worn on their own or with pendants. This one's been assembled, soldered together and cleaned. However, this will still need a final polish before it can go to a customer. So I hope you enjoyed this look at how we make these sterling silver necklaces. I'll see you again soon. Toodles.